Hello everybody in the room and joining us again online. We've cleared the first hurdle. The leaders panel is out of the way, but we've got plenty more where that came from, starting with a really exciting panel on the challenges and opportunity in the residential space, and there's no one better placed to chair that than my good friend Kellie Court. Kellie, come up to the stage. Kellie Court is of course the Program Director for Climate and Energy at the Australian Council of Social Service. She is a strong advocate for the just, equitable and inclusive climate transition, and she's had a long career in public policy, and I'm delighted you're here, and thank you for all your hard work, one of the true driving forces behind this event. But I will introduce Kellie's full panel so she can get straight to it. Vanessa Davis, the Senior Researcher at Tagentyere. Have I got it? There you go, thank you. Please come on down. Vanessa, she's come all the way from Alice Springs, I understand. Vanessa, thank you for joining us. At the Hub, Vanessa's expertise as an Aboriginal cultural broker and researcher is critical in bridging the gap between research and lived experience, and she's interested in energy efficiency, energy security and solar and remote housing. Vanessa, you're in the right place. Thanks for being with us. Ben Milsom. Ben is the co-founder and chief commercial officer and co-founder of Plenti, a consumer finance provider with an emphasis on green loans. It was a little bit of a sub-theme in the panel, the need to support vulnerable households in this journey, but also bring capital markets to bear on decarbonising the entire building stock at scale. So looking forward to your insights, Ben. Margot Delafoulhouze from Climateworks Centre, whose work looks to catalyse system-level transitions to net zero emissions in the urban environment, building on her experience across research, consulting, policy and advocacy. Good to see you, Margot. And Wendy Hayhurst, the CEO of the Community Housing Industry Association, or CHIA, the peak body representing not-for-profit community housing organisations across Australia, and she has deep expertise in social and affordable housing both across Australia and internationally, with experience in government consulting and NGOs. So I think if we did a word cloud on all those bios, I think deep expertise would figure pretty prominently. Kellie, over to you.
Thanks, Luke, and really good to be here. And what an exciting time, straight after the announcement by the Assistant Minister that the new federal government is going to develop an energy performance strategy. It'd be good to work out a little more what comes under performance, but the title of this session is around efficient, electric, and affordable, creating better homes. So for us, those things definitely contribute to, better energy performance. So, I'm really keen to take up the Minister's challenge that she gave us, that over the next few months she'll be consulting widely with the community, widely, and maybe wildly, who knows, with the community, and she's really keen to hear from us. What are the opportunities? What are the solutions? And then one of the things I want to really talk about is how do we accelerate this as well? So, potentially having a target, an ambitious energy efficiency target, is an opportunity for us to accelerate these opportunities and solutions. Great panel here. Initially, I was asked to keep it to 3, but it was too hard because I really wanted the expertise that we've got here. So I'm going to start off in terms of what are the opportunities and benefits of residential energy efficiency. And I'm going to throw to Margot first, because Climateworks does quite a fair bit of research around what do we need to do to decarbonise our economy, and has really championed energy efficiency. So I'm really keen to hear a little bit from you, from the work that you've been doing. What do you see as the opportunities and benefits from residential energy efficiency?
Thank you, Kellie. And good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here. We've all said that energy efficiency is not really sexy. I don't know why we say this. For me, it's a little bit of the James Bond or the Tomb Raider of solutions, because honestly, what solution can, not only protect a lot of people in terms of health and, cost and all of that, save the planet with, the great impact it can have on climate, but also be a really important solution for energy security and geopolitical safety. So I do think it is actually quite sexy in my opinion. Now back to the serious stuff. So as you mentioned, Kellie, Climateworks does research, and we've modelled decarbonisation scenarios for Australia, ones that put us in line with the goal of 2 degrees, ones that put us in line with the goal of 1.5 degrees. Now Australia has a legislated climate target, which is fantastic. In both cases of those scenarios, what our research shows is that energy efficiency is a critical pillar, and actually one of the first ones that we should really be activating. The Assistant Minister mentioned that the IEA says that energy efficiency puts us, 40% of the effort comes from energy efficiency. And what we've shown in our research is that to be in line with those goals of the Paris Agreement, Australia would have, for example, to decrease its energy consumption by 16% by 2030 compared to 2020. And in buildings, and that's actually quite in line with what California has committed to, we need to have energy consumption, particularly in residential buildings, and in commercial buildings it's reducing by 30%. So that's 2030 compared to 2020. So we've got really clear targets. We've talked a lot about targets, and I think we've got really robust science that tells us that energy efficiency is really important here. So obviously that's the climate importance of energy efficiency, but we have talked about the health impacts, and again, the Sustainability Victoria study that just came out is very clear on the benefits there for households and protecting households. So there's a very important role for energy efficiency here.
Yeah, thanks, Margot. And I'm really keen now to sort of, you've talked about opportunities, including for health there, Margot. I'm really keen to hear from you, Vanessa, as someone who works and lives in Alice Springs, where it's quite extremes, can be extremely hot, 40, 50 degrees, and then especially in the dry season, quite cold, down to 0 degrees at night. And there's quite a lot of social housing in rural areas as well, and keen to hear from you your experience about whether they're up to scratch, and what are the opportunities here around an energy efficiency target and a focus from governments, federal and state governments, for the communities that you work with.
Well, in the community that I'm living in Alice Springs, and the surrounding community, there's about 4,000 houses, public housing, and they're not up to standard with the weather conditions that we endure down there. During winter, we had about 14, 15 days of -4. And to cope with that, we had to have electricity, because we have prepaid meters in our houses. And to keep the heater going, we have to use a lot of power, because at the moment, when the houses was renovated, we had a little fireplace in there, but when it was renovated, it was taken out. So it's relying more on energy, and we're using too much energy. And especially for people that's got chronic illness such as diabetes and renal failures and other stuff, it's really hard to keep the power on for the food wise, and to keep up the medicines in the fridge, and keep the renal machines working. And it's costing us a lot of money winter time, and even in summer it's extra money. And then we have this friendly credit that goes on every weekend, and by the time it comes Monday, we pay about $200 back to cover the debt. And as you all know, that we don't have that much money. We're on low income in Alice Springs there, everyone there. So power would be off for about a week or two until we get assistance either from Tagentyere or from elsewhere.
And what do you see as the opportunities with an energy efficiency strategy for your community? I'd
like to see that to reduce the power costs and maybe have solar powers in their houses, because we generate a lot of heat, and that can cover the cost for when it's very hot and during the summer and during winter as well.
Yeah.
But it's very hard at the moment because our houses are not up to standard, because all our houses are 5-star rated, where other, like in South Australia, they've got 8.5-star rated for their houses to be built. But in the central, in the Northern Territory, in the central region, it's not that
Yeah.
rated high.
And we know there's a big difference between 5 and 8.3 stars in terms of how much energy it uses and, you know, how comfortable it is in those extreme heats as well. Wendy, I might move over to you. As the CEO of the Community Housing Association, you and I have been working together for a little while because there's a lot of opportunity with community housing. And I know that a lot of your members have been doing quite a lot of work already looking at what the business case is. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what those opportunities that your members see?
Yes, thanks, Kellie. And thanks for your leadership in that as well, working with Kellie on looking at the opportunities to retrofit social and affordable housing, because it's really a bit of the missing link here. And I think it's a great opportunity because if you're looking to drive energy efficiency, you've got this sector that can enable putting together a program. It's not like dealing with individual households. We've got some control about putting a program together and developing, I suppose, the infrastructure, the ideas, the technology that then can be replicated elsewhere. So you can put a program together, and we know our colleagues in the UK have done that. May not go now into the third program, but they've had an excellent decarbonisation program where organisations can put forward projects which they will part fund, and that will be topped up with government investment. And we know it makes a difference because we've been talking this afternoon about the difference it makes to the individuals who are living in the homes, but also the difference it makes to the emissions from those homes and the opportunities to get to net zero. So if we think of our sector, it's 120,000 homes now, not excluding public housing. You've got 400,000 homes. I'm afraid many of them don't make 5. A lot less than that. We don't have good data on exactly what the energy efficiency is. Well, not good publicly available data, but we've got some great opportunities because as well as the Housing Future Fund, the new government's putting in place some institutional reforms that can drive that change. So it's got the Housing Agency, Housing Australia, the potential of joining up different bits of government and to include in that plan a long-term strategy to drive energy efficiency in our sector, I think is a wide open goal that we can score. We've got the new agreement, the National Housing and Homeless Agreement that has to be negotiated between the Commonwealth and the states and territories. I think put back to July 24. So again, that's an opportunity to get all of those levels of government, including local government, involved in that as well to set those targets. So I think we've got lessons from elsewhere. We've got the work that we've done with ACOS to look at some of the costs of upgrading our homes. So I am pretty excited about what we could do here.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Wendy. And Ben, you're the finance guy, and really excited to hear what some of your thoughts are, especially around solutions and Accelerate. But before we get to that, what do you see as some of the opportunities? I mean, you've had a look at some of the countries overseas where they're at and compared to where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So fundamentally, from an individual homeowner or home occupier's perspective, energy efficiency is about more comfortable, healthier and more affordable homes. And energy efficiency unlocks just a much higher quality of living for a lot of people in everyday houses. And there's been a lot of good work done recently in Australia to really quantify or sort of make specific some of those benefits. So Race for 2030, which is a government and industry research body, issued a great report late last year, which showed that some modest interventions in houses, focusing on thermal efficiency, draft protection, pipe lagging, installing heat pump hot water and some solar systems would see the average detached dwelling in New South Wales energy usage fall anywhere up to 90%, in other states as much as 70%. That's the energy cost to the consumer. And funnily enough, their CO2 emissions fell by almost exactly the same amount. An indicative household might have an energy bill pre-intervention of $2,500. By the end of the intervention, it was $200. It's a huge saving for homeowners and a much better built environment to live in. Importantly, what that certainty or what that value benefit drives is more participation by people like Plenti, who want to fund the investment for people to make those changes. And the more clear and the more certain the financial benefits to the household are, the more likely more capital can be deployed to those sectors to pick up that slack. And it's a pretty sizable bill. We're not talking about really small amounts of money here. If we're, the retrofit of Australia's housing stock to meet even just a 6-star standard, which is the standard required for a new home build, would be in the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. The interventions I mentioned before, just focusing on insulation, drafting, glazing, and some solar and heat pump usage is as much as $30,000 for a typical isolated dwelling. That's not something that a lot of Australians can put their hand in their pocket and immediately afford. And the story is the same worldwide, so we're not unique in that regard. And so when you look across international jurisdictions, you see a focus on finance. There's a number of different approaches. Australia has very much focused on the private sector to drive those investments. So there has been some really interesting government programs. We've seen things like the Empowering Homes program pilot in New South Wales, which was an interest-free loan scheme to drive solar panels and batteries. We've seen the Home Battery Scheme in South Australia, which is an $80 million program that put 20,000 batteries in people's homes in less than 5 years. So there's a great spirit here of working together with government and private sector to drive that investment. In countries like Germany and France and the Netherlands, you see sort of subsidised or incentivised financing structures that look to tie the interest rate of the loans or finance to the energy efficiency improvements. There's some very beginning parts of that happening here with the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, but there's lots more work to be done there to improve. And then last of all, there's some of the programs out of the US which tie repayments back to things like council or rates bills to allow a much longer term and sort of sustainable financing option, which I know is under consideration by some states and governments here in Australia as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I want to flip over now to what are some of the solutions. As I said at the start, Minister McAllister made it really clear that they're really keen to hear from everybody about what the solutions are. So Vanessa, maybe starting with you, what are some of the solutions that you see are important for the community that you live and work in?
I guess the more important thing is make sure that the houses are adequate for people to live in, and because I always say that what's underlying in the houses becomes all those chronic diseases that we endure while we're there in the Northern Territory, and we want to prevent that, but we have to have an adequate houses, and maybe thinking about reducing all those bills of for during winter and during summer. Maybe put something there that will. Like a solar panel to help reduce. We need to reduce some of that billings, and make it comfortable for everybody to live in.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that at the moment the houses are built to about a 5-star standard, and you compared what's happening in South Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, is that an important solution, that we are building new social housing in particular? Beyond, I mean, we just saw building ministers announce 7 stars for new building, but should we be building social housing even more in that?
Yeah, in the Northern Territory we're still a bit behind, lacking behind in the build housings at the moment, and I compared it to South Australia because they got 8.3 standard, but we're still stuck in 5.
Yeah.
And to make lifestyle comfortable and affordable, we need to make sure that all houses are level at that 8.3 or a bit higher than 5 for people to afford to live in comfortable.
Yeah. So if we got the opportunity to be doing it now, because you live in a house for 20, 30 years, we might as well be going beyond that standard to make sure that people are, reducing their bills as much as possible.
Yeah, that's the goal for us.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to strive. But at the moment, resources is the lack of. We don't have much resource and we don't have much funding.
Yeah.
Because we're a territory and it's very hard to ask for funding to fit that budget or to make that house comfortable.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. Wendy, what do you see some of the solutions are in the community housing area?
Well, I would agree that building more social and affordable housing is one of those we can build them to high standards. I think with the Housing Future Fund it will be at least 7, but we may want to be exploring what the opportunities are there to pilot more ambitious standards if the subsidies are allowing that. I think that's what's certainly used internationally. I think there are opportunities with finance. ESG, you've been talking about individuals, but for organisations like ourselves, we're going to require a lot of private investment as well. So the work that we're doing to develop a community housing standard, an ESG standard, which will be pretty ambitious, but it will give us a target to aim for, and we'll be able to talk about the achievements. I think there's more of an opportunity for us to convince all governments that housing is an investment and not a welfare service, and that we should be thinking about the benefits that come up front. So we're working with Infrastructure Australia and Infrastructure South Australia and some councils to develop a cost-benefit analysis which will show what the benefits are from that investment in health, in reductions in fuel poverty, for example, as well as all the other social benefits that come from investing in that. There has been some really good work done by New South Wales government on behalf of the Tagentyere to Zero. That's looked at what the barriers are in social and affordable housing and has come up with some good solutions, not all of them costing a lot of money. We've got 160 members. Not all of those members have and when I use the word capacity, I don't mean lack of intelligence, but just the people to understand what's the best and most effective way to retrofit their homes. So, providing a resource so that we don't go. I'm so old. I've been in this job for so long. I remember when PVC came on, and everyone went hell for leather, replacing doors and windows with PVC. 10 years later, we're all regretting it because of just, it just was not what it was sold to be. I am not suggesting that retrofitting housing will be like that, but there will be bits and pieces of technology that are not as good as others. So we've got to provide that resource, I think, so that people can get that guidance. And I know you're doing some good work at Climateworks, looking at different ways to retrofit as well, so getting that expertise out. We do need government resource for social and affordable housing. And I just want to finish up with, it's one of those things, and I was thinking, shall I say this or not? But we've got a very clever member, and she said to me, why can there not be a carbon offset for retrofitting social and affordable housing? It would be easy to prove, wouldn't it? We're reviewing carbon offsets, so why not? So I thought I'd just float it. Not my idea, clever young woman working for Bridge here, she should get the credit. But it'd be great, I think, to look at that.
Yeah, and I think these are the sort of innovative solutions that we need to be thinking about, right? Yeah. And Wendy, you did a very good job of introducing that Climateworks is doing some work on solutions.
I didn't pay her.
It'd be great. It'd be great to hear about some of those the solutions that you are working on.
So what we're working on, which we've called Renovation Pathways, is a piece of research that is really going to look at for the main building archetypes across Australia. Some of it will be social housing, some of it will be other types of buildings. What are the renovation strategies that we have for those buildings in different climate zones? Because that's also important. We need, I feel like, to scale up action at the pace that we need to scale it up, we need that granularity of information of how do you retrofit a certain type of building in a certain climate zone, what makes sense, and what will be the savings that you can expect from that, both in terms of costs, but obviously also energy and emissions. So that's the piece of work that we're working on, and we're really excited also to work with across the whole sector and help others use this, because it's a kind of piece of work that could inform how banks design their green products, for example, so that they support households in financing those renovations. And these green products should no longer be the opt-in. Actually, they should become the norm, right? And what the opt-out would be, you would opt out of those if you want to, but really the benefit of it should make you not want to opt out. So that's what we're working on. But I just wanted to come back also to your question around solutions. We've talked about targets, so I won't come back to this. It's really important that we know where we're heading. And I think what I wanted to communicate is there's an important orchestration between the sticks and the carrots, and the standards on one hand, which are really important to make sure that we bring the whole market up to a higher standard, and that we normalize for everyone better quality homes, and that it's not the privilege of those who can afford it. So the standards are really important, but equally the carrots and supporting and incentivizing through clever finance, through government support, particularly for low-income households, will be really important to prepare the market for those standards to come in. And certainly the highest impact we know in terms of energy savings and social impact and health impact will be by supporting those low-income households and social housing buildings in that transition that can really help kickstart the market, help bring the industry up to speed. And so really wanted to insist on that choreography between standards and financial incentives, which I think should really be at the core of that plan that we're looking forward to seeing in 2023.
Yeah, and so Margot, when you talk about standards, some of them are around like new builds, what we're requiring, but as you know, a lot of us are also collectively asking for mandating energy efficiency standards in rental properties, mandating disclosures when you sell and buy properties as well. So they're some of the sorts of things that you're talking about in terms of standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got two main avenues. There's new buildings and existing buildings. For new buildings, I almost want to say it's a bit of a no-brainer. We know where we're going. We need to head to a zero carbon ready building code. And we know that this needs to happen before the end of this decade if we want to be in line with our climate commitments. We've got the National Construction Code, 2025, 2028, great milestones, but I think it would be really useful to set that long-term and reset that long-term commitment, because actually it's already been done with the trajectory that we're heading to a zero carbon building code. That's really important for new buildings. But as you say, we've got existing buildings, and how do we also incentivize landlords in this case to renovate? And we need that massive renovation wave in Australia. We've got 11 million buildings which basically are not fit for purpose, not fit for a warming climate. So we need to renovate those. And in this case, what you mentioned, Kellie, minimum rental standards are going to be really important to provide that incentives to upgrade those buildings. Minimum energy performance standards, broadly really important as well. So for existing buildings, those mechanisms are also going to be really important so that we make sure that the 3 million households who are actually renters and don't necessarily have the means to upgrade their homes have a chance that their homes get upgraded as well.
Yeah, thanks. It's really important. And Edwin, my boss, has left me. But I mean, she would be cross if I didn't mention that, people on low income, while there are a lot living in public and community housing, what our research shows is that a lot of people on job seeker are actually in private rental. There's such a long wait list for social housing, and as people know, if you pick up I was going to say a newspaper, but who does that anymore? Read the media. We have a rental crisis at the moment. So we've got this twin issue at the moment with high rents and then people living in homes that are, less than 1 star and paying exorbitant energy bills at once. And Edwina earlier talked about the choices that we're seeing people make as a result of that. Ben, Margot just talked about the standards and the regulatory side, but she also talked about the carrots, which leads to the incentives. You talked a little bit before about some of the incentives you're seeing overseas, but what do you think the opportunities here for incentives are in Australia?
Yeah, look, we'd absolutely agree with Margot that a huge part of this is about driving the incentive that acts on retrofit. New builds is a problem that's, I think, reasonably well understood and on its way. And the issue with retrofit is it's a whole lot of people already living in houses, and it's trying to convince them to make a change. And so what does that look like? And I think there's 3 components for us, which is, one is about awareness, the second is about cost, and the third is about sort of supply or quality. And on the awareness piece, I think you don't have to go very far to look around the industry, and we work with hundreds of installers and vendors of renewable and clean energy solutions in Australia, that very few of them are aware of technologies or options beyond, say, solar or maybe solar and battery. So in terms of the understanding of all of the other options available to them, whether that's solar hot water or heat pump, whether that's energy efficient air conditioning, whether that's even just draft stopping and pipe lagging, there's very, very little consumer awareness about what those options are. And more importantly, and I think to some of the Climateworks research, what the benefit of that is to the household, how you might save money by choosing to do something that will ultimately both benefit you and the environment. And the other side of that awareness is, you've got to drive people to care, and that is about delivering the value to the household. It's about making it enticing. And the solar industry is a really interesting case study there, that by showing people they can save significant amount of money, it's supercharged an industry that's driven Australia to be have the highest concentration of solar per capita in the world. 30% of households have a solar panel on their roof. Why? Because the financial benefits are very compelling to those individuals. There is a financial sector prepared to back or fund that investment to deliver those savings. The messaging and consumer proposition is very simple. We need to see that expand out to the rest of the industry and all the other types of technologies that are available to make retrofit houses to make them more efficient. So that's fundamentally about cost, that's about value, and that unfortunately probably comes with some support, and we see sporadic efforts across Australia, different measures at state level about investing in different energy efficiency technologies for different groups, but we need a more holistic solution. If you look at the success of the STC program when it comes to solar panels in Australia and how many that is delivered and how much broad-based benefit that's created in terms of transitioning to clean energy development, that's a really interesting model in our mind about what you can do there with other kinds of technologies to drive uptake. And then the last part, once you've got a bit of awareness or hunger from consumers, or at least a commercial sector who's interested in providing those options to households and taking it to them, is around raising the bar, is around making sure there's high quality supply of equipment, high quality supply of installers and providers. That's about regulation, that's about licensing, it's about standards. And at the moment there isn't, beyond sort of NATERS and some of the other sort of item-specific ratings, there isn't a holistic standard that financiers can get behind, for example, to make a decision about whether something is energy efficient or it isn't, whether someone's making an improvement or not in what they're doing. We're busy working with some of our funding partners at the moment to try and design products that allow consumers to really easily understand what you get if you improve the energy efficiency of your home. And it's a very difficult conversation to have. So more standardization and more sort of cross-industry collaboration on things like Energy Star ratings is a really important initiative.
Yeah, I think Frankie Muscovich will be tweeting you right now, because she's certainly been championing that one. I definitely hear you on that. Vanessa, I've had a question come through on Slido for you. You talked before about, I imagine not many people are aware, because that in a lot of remote areas, people on prepaid meters, as you described before. So, it's not like most of us in suburbia where the electricity's there and someone might, if you're not paying your bills, come out and disconnect you. You can be disconnected at any time, and there's challenges, as you've described, for that, because people can't keep their medication in a fridge cool any longer, and you can't keep the homes warm or cool, which has health implications as well. So the question that's come through is, should we abolish prepaid electricity meters, and is there a fair way to ensure people get power that they need?
In some situations, some prepaid meters are working for some, but not all. And I can't weigh on that because everybody has their own different needs in their housings. But the prepaid meter is somehow, before we used to get electricity bill, we get billed and they get some payments get deducted, but with this prepaid meter, she just got to top it up with probably $50 or $20. But you have to go to a certain store to top it up, and you have a certain card to top it up. But then sometimes when it's on the weekends and the communities and the shops, community stores are shut, and they have no power for the whole weekend until Monday.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can certainly envision a time where you're building housing in rural remote areas that are, you know, what we'd zero carbon ready, so best thermal, electric, renewable energy where you need it, so that your energy bills are close to zero, but you know, potentially even generating your own energy, and you won't have to experience the prepaid meters anymore. Is that sort of the goal that your community is working towards?
Yeah, trying to work towards that, but we're doing a bit of research on the housing coming up soon to find out all those categories and the problems and see if we can find a solution or provide recommendations towards the government to find a solution to reduce the energy.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to finish off just talking about how do we accelerate. So we've heard some of the solutions. We've got 5 minutes to now quickly talk about what would you do to now accelerate those solutions. So Wendy, I might start with you.
Thank you, Kellie. You did say you were going to start with me, so the others have got the thinking time. I do think setting a standard, because that galvanises and directs us to doing something. I think it has to be set at a timeline that allows people a just transition, if you like. I'm thinking of our sector. You and I have had some conversations about that. We need to have the solutions in place. But having that standard saying that residential is going to meet this percentage of our emissions reduction, and this is what the standard has to be, will, you know, make sure that our sector, investors, you know, the plan that's going to be written for housing and homelessness takes it into account.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Ben, what would you do to accelerate now?
I think it comes back to that consumer demand piece, and I think there's a couple of aspects to that. One is around catalysts for house owners or homeowners or tenants to make changes. So looking at some of the international examples, you know, the 3 key pivot points for making investments in energy efficiency are selling a home, renting a home, and undertaking some sort of refurbishment or renovation. And refurbishment and renovation, I understand, is supported by things like the National Construction Code, but renting and selling, you know, we'd like to see more transparency around the star ratings of homes and using that as a carrot to incentivise homeowners to make the investments so that they compare with others, and it's something that will drive consumer demand. If you can receive a financial benefit either in sale or in rental prices for having a more energy efficient home, then that's something that will drive consumer behaviour. Similarly, we'd like to see you know, a consistent, thoughtful plan around incentivising the right kinds of investments. That again makes it a no-brainer for households. It shouldn't be a question of, is it an 8-year or 10-year or 15-year payoff? It should be, this is the right thing to do for me and it will save me money today. And that creates a stable environment in which capital providers can make the investment, can deliver the tens of billions of dollars that will be required to transform Australia's building stock.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Vanessa, is there one thing that you would like to see that would really accelerate the change that you'd like to see in your community?
Well, I agree on Wendy and I agree on Ben, and I think for everybody, like normal people, to have a standard house and a comfortable one to live in, to long as, like I've mentioned before, that we need to reduce the cost of living, and because we're out in the community and we endure all this sunlight and that, and it can need a bit more help with solar, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks, Vanessa. And Margot, finally, what would you like to see to accelerate the uptake?
It's hard, that question. So many things, but I think what we've all recognised is that energy efficiency and retrofitting is a user journey, and we've got different types of households, and that will require different tailored solutions for social housing, for middle income households, and different types of financing. And so having a plan that addresses those different segments of the market will be really critical. But I say that I really believe in the power of policy and the symbol that a strong policy signal sends. And so, again, that plan that's just been announced is really welcome. And I think really elevating renovation, energy efficient, electrified renovation, and resilient homes to a national priority, if not a national emergency, would be, I think, quite powerful as a signal to the whole industry and business sector, and also to households.
Yeah, that's very inspiring, Margot. Okay, actually, we're right on time. I was just going to say, if anyone had one last word inspired by Margot.
Let's get to work.
Let's get to work. I love it. All right, please thank this wonderful panel for their contribution.
Thank you, Kellie. What an amazing conversation. And I think just unpacked so well that there's distinct challenges, and you can get very, very granular, right? But it's like this, the challenge in supporting vulnerable households on this journey, and they need a particular type of policy support. But then the rest of the community, needs to be made easy. It needs to be made straightforward. They need that ecosystem of product and service providers, and they need that finance opportunity. But the thing that I reflect on is that while the way that you pay for it is probably different across those different cohorts, the actual products and the services market is the same. And by investing in vulnerable households, we can build out that ecosystem that everybody is going to be able to leverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Kellie.